Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Wednesday evening to you all. I hope you guys are doing well out there and certainly had yourselves a great day, and I hope you all are having a great week out there so far. Thank you all for joining me this evening as we discuss a couple things. One's going to be Tropical Storm Tammy, which formed this afternoon. This could and likely will affect the Lesser Antilles. We kind of been talking about this system a little bit on and off, and it is looking like it's going to affect the Lesser Antilles, the Leeward Islands, so we'll speak a little bit on that, but I'm not thinking this is going to be a massive deal, but it's something we certainly need to watch, as this is most likely going to be a landfalling tropical cyclone into our folks here in the Lesser Antilles. So we're going to speak on it a little bit right in the beginning of the video. But the majority of this video is going to be talking about something I'm watching next week, which is the potential for a couple storm systems associated with a jet that's going to be digging deep down into the central U.S. There's going to be a pretty strong cold front with this. It's looking likely that this is going to happen. This cold front could be by far our strongest cold front and could bring by far our coldest air of the fall season. I think areas will see their first significant snowfall from this, and then some areas could see some severe weather. That's not being talked about near as much because there's still some things that needs to be worked out in the model guidance, but we're going to talk about all in this video, figure out what we do know, because there's still a lot. I mean, a lot of details that need to be worked out. We're over a week out from this, but I really think if you're in the Northern Plains, Montana, Wyoming, the Dakotas, even areas in Nebraska, Colorado potentially, some very cold air. By far, like I said, the coldest air of the season could be working its way towards you folks by maybe this time next week, a little bit later out. So if you folks have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. And like the video if you like it. If you guys got anything I can pray about or pray over, as always, please put it in the comments below. My allergies are really bothering me today. It's gotten worse throughout the day. So if you hear a difference in me and if you hear me sneeze or one or two times, I do apologize. Just I'm not really feeling under the weather. Just got some allergies. My youngest girl was dealing with the same thing, but she's got a nasty cough. Thankfully, I don't have a cough, but definitely asking for prayers that her cough goes away. But let's get rolling. So pretty much what you see out here is you got this upper low going across the middle of the country. Well, I would say the upper portions of the lower 48. You see this right here. And then you got Tammy. We'll go on and get a zoomed in look at Tammy. Tammy's right here. It honestly just looks like an area of showers and storms. A weak tropical storm right now, and it's pretty far south, but there is a low-level circulation underneath all this mid-level convection, which you see and the reds, the blacks, and whites right here, which indicate colder cloud tops, which indicates higher cloud tops. We talked about this a lot when we were breaking down Hurricane Idalia and Hurricane Lee, things like that. Same kind of deal out here in the tropics. A very disorganized tropical storm. This is forecast to strengthen. Lesser Antilles right here, Puerto Rico right in here. And if we look at Zoom Earth, which combines like Google Maps with the actual National Hurricane Center site, it's pretty awesome. Forecast to begin to strengthen a little bit. It's going to be a 60-mile-per-hour tropical storm. Right now, it's a 40-mile-per-hour tropical storm. Should strengthen into a 45-mile-per-hour storm tonight. Then by the time we're getting into tomorrow afternoon, maybe a 60-mile-per-hour tropical storm. And its forecast peak intensity right now is 70 miles per hour. Okay, which is technically about 5 miles per hour shy of hurricane status. But as of now, just forecast to be a tropical storm as it brings impacts, tropical storm force conditions to the Lesser Antilles. But right now, there's just tropical storm watches up. I think that this cone could very well shift a little bit further north, but it could stay around this area. The weaker it remains right now, I think the more likely the path is going to be further west. Okay, and which means it would affect more of the Lesser Antilles, Leeward Islands, places like that. But the further west it goes, most likely the weaker the storm it will be. So it's kind of I would say a win-win in a way. Now, if this kind of goes right in the middle ground, I would say the worst case scenario is what is forecast to happen, which would be a mid-grade, high-end tropical storm making landfall somewhere in Guadeloupe or just any of these islands in the Lesser Antilles. So it's just, we need to watch out. This is going to bring gusty winds. It's going to bring 45, 60 to 65 mile per hour wind gusts, heavy rain. But hopefully this is not a high impact event. This doesn't trend more high end here in the coming day or two. But the latest GFS does have this get its act together pretty quickly, becomes a higher end tropical storm, but then completely misses the Lesser Antilles as it begins to strengthen, brings some impacts, but definitely misses it. Now, the European brings it more into the islands, but as a weaker storm. In fact, I don't even have the European up. Let's go on and bring it up. Much quicker storm. The European does have this being a tropical storm and just clipping the Leeward Islands sometime Friday afternoon. So hunker down out there, but I don't really think it's anything you folks can't handle out here. You guys, I'm sure, are very tough people. And just being pretty much the gateway to the tropics, I'm sure you folks have seen a lot of nasty storms before. Definitely be aware of Tammy. She's out here going to try to pack a punch. But let's break down what I'm watching next week. So we'll start off by looking at the Climate Prediction Center's the 6 to 10 day temperature outlook, which takes us to the 24th to the 28th of October. As you can tell, above average temperatures will begin to dominate most of, I would say the eastern central half of the central U.S., if that makes any sense, and this the eastern U.S. in general. It looks like we'll have the return of above average temperatures. Now, I would say for the south, that's 80s. For up here in the Great Lakes region and the the Ohio River Valley, the Northeast, that might just be 60s and 70s. So nothing unbearable, I don't think. But what you already see is below average temperatures and confidence increasing, and here in the dark blue, below average temperatures are starting to ooze down into the northern plains and northern Rockies, all the way down to Front Range, pretty much all the way down to High Plains, okay, the Great Plains. Below average temperatures beginning to dominate the area. Now, this is because of a trough that I'm watching, and we're about to break it down. We go to October 26th all the way to November 1st. Below average temperatures still showing up, okay? And extending a little bit further east, already knocking away the chances of above average temperatures. So what are we seeing out here? We look at the latest GFS. What we're going to start by looking at is, we're going to look at first is temperature anomalies. This is basically temperatures compared to averages this time of the year. So we'll start it off next Monday morning. Well, Monday morning, October the 23rd, okay? Above average temperatures dominating most of the high plains, the central portion of the country, and areas out west, the Rockies, okay? You got, anywhere from 6 to 12 to 13 degrees above average. I think there'll be two cold fronts. The first one will move through probably Monday-ish, all right? This will knock you to below average temperatures for Montana, anywhere from 3 to as much as 10 degrees below average, okay? Now, the middle of the country still starting to bake here. Not bake like in 90 to 100 degrees, but well above average temperatures. I'm talking anywhere from 10 to 20 degrees above average, okay? All right, it warms back up after this first kind of cold front pushes through, which does not get very far south. But the big daddy cold front starts to move in Wednesday. As you can tell, look up here in Montana, well below average temperatures beginning to creep in. And then we start to make our way into Thursday morning, guys. And this cold front is starting to sag down. At the same time, you're well above average. You got a big time temperature gradient somewhere here in the northern plains, the upper Midwest. Well above average right here in the Midwest, just the central portion of the country. But this cold front starts to get a move on pretty quickly. And then we start to get into Thursday evening. You are 20 to 30 degrees below average in Montana and areas of Wyoming. Okay, for this time of the year, that is probably equivalent to highs in the teens and 20s. But look at these below average temperatures starting to head down the Front Range into the Great Plains. And then we start to make our way into Friday morning. And then we make our way into Friday evening. And here it goes, going right down the High Plains, anywhere from 20, right around 20 degrees below average temperature-wise for next Friday evening, based off one run of the GFS, with the core of the cold air as far as the lower 48 being really over Montana. And this continues. We go about 10 days out, there's a big-time gradient. Now, this is pretty far out, pretty unreliable time frame. The jury is still out how far south and east this cold front gets. Anybody that's not being influenced by this cold front, this trough, is probably above average. You literally will go, there's going to be a gradient, I think, with this kind of setup, where you'll go from above average temperatures to below average temperatures. There's no average. There's no happy medium. Chances are, 20 to 30 miles make a huge difference in these kind of setups. And here it comes. It finally starts to ooze south. But at this point, guys, we're getting all the way until next weekend. And look at this cold front. Man, this is impressive. Okay? And it looks like, yeah, I can already tell by these temperature anomalies. It's trying to show winter weather all the way down to Texas. But this is pretty impressive. Okay, and the thing is, the European model, which is typically a lot more conservative, shows the same thing. First cold front barely sneaks inside the lower 48 into the northern plains. All right, Monday. This does bring, I mean, a good 10 to 15 degrees below average, but this is not the real cold front. The real one comes a little bit later, and it's a little bit further west than what the GFS shows. Okay, and here it comes. We're getting into next Thursday evening. Look at these below average temperatures setting up, and then we take it all the way into next Friday afternoon. Wyoming, Montana, not just 15 to 20 degrees below average. I'm talking about 20 to 30 degrees below average. And look at the gradient here in Kansas, for example. Southeast part of the state, based off this run, the GFS, the European, just a cool, crisp 15 to 20 degrees above average. Now you head on off to the far northwest portion of the Kansas, all right, anyway, it's as much as like 15 degrees below average temperature-wise. It's pretty incredible, guys. This looks like, and you go all the way out 10 days out, and it shows something similar as the GFS. You got a gradient that shows 20 to 25 degrees above average temperature-wise, and then you go across this gradient, it goes right back to average to below average in a pretty short amount of time, like a 1 to 2 hour driving distance. Now, I'm showing you all this, and you're probably thinking, man, in my head, this is exactly what's going to happen. This will switch up a little bit. But I can tell you, I think some cold air is coming regardless. It's just how far south is it going to get? How cold will it be? Now, you actually compared, I know you're thinking, Mitch, I don't really care about anomalies or compared to average. What is this? How cold is it going to be? Well, you look at the GFS, and we'll just look at that, and here it comes, kind of the first wave, but here comes Wednesday morning. All right, here comes. Look, this is Wednesday afternoon. You're getting well into the 80s, into the Mississippi Valley. Nice 70-degree weather all the way up into the high plains of Wyoming. But you head on up to your neighbors in Montana. I mean, it's struggling to get above freezing, right? Okay, you start to get to Thursday afternoon, cold front moves through, and you go from highs in the 70s in western Nebraska to highs in the 30s of the next day. Okay? All right, and you keep this moving. Look at this cold air, guys. These are low temperatures next Friday morning based off this run, the GFS. Single digits into Montana, Wyoming, especially the higher elevations. All right, make your way into Friday afternoon. All right, it's warming all the way into the 80s in Texas, Louisiana. And then the cold front starts to ooze down quickly into Texas. But this is getting over 10 days out. Very unreliable time frame. But it really drops just the Arctic hammer for late October standards across the middle of the country in the northern plains. This is high temperatures like next Sunday. All right, and guys, remember, this is 12, 13 days out. This is, oh, here comes the sneeze. This is not exactly what's going to happen, but this is pretty impressive, guys. It really is. Very cold temperatures coming. And my folks, that's viewing in the eastern U.S., we'll talk about you here in a little bit here in a second, but the confidence is obviously much lower the further east you go. What we do know is there's probably going to be some kind of storm system with this. We're going to speak on snow first. There's going to be a storm system down here that likely won't have any snow with it because it's not kind of tangled up with any cold air that's in place yet. So there'll be kind of a low that probably is going to be on the south side of this cold front. This will probably have a chance to bring some storms, some severe weather. We'll talk more on that here in a second. But here comes the cold front, right? With energy associated with it. Here comes a low that tries to develop, but it misses wide right with the cold air. Might be just enough here in the UP and Michigan. But here comes energy associated with the real Arctic boundary. Now, this is getting about 7, 8-ish days out. But this could be a significant snow somewhere in Wyoming, South Dakota. Something we watch. Okay? And then we're getting about 9 to 10 days out. We get another piece of energy that forms with plenty of cold air on top. And, you got an early season snowstorm showing up in Nebraska, South Dakota, Arizona, Wyoming, southern Minnesota. But this is not a forecast, guys. There's a lot of energy flying around. If you get a almost near stationary boundary sitting out here, that's basically where your jet is sitting. So you're going to have what we call an overrunning event where you have waves of just precipitation that could basically run over this cold air. Okay, but we got to figure out what kind of energy we're going to be dealing with out there. And we got a while before we figure that out. It's just like the tropics. With the tropics, you figure out, with the tropics, you kind of figure out if there's going to be a storm first, right? I would say with the winter, it's kind of the opposite. You figure out if there's going to really, in this case, for example, is there even going to be cold air when speaking of winter weather? Okay, is there going to be cold air nearby? Is it going to be here? And then you kind of try to figure out the details of the storm system. Now, of course, that can mix a match sometimes, but in this case, we got to figure out the core of that cold air. Now, I think confidence is increasing that that's going to be there, but we still need to figure out some details on it. First system Monday could have some precipitation with it. Here it is, low pressure right here, flying right over the middle of the country. A little bit of precipitation on top. This could bring some snow from Montana, North Dakota. And then here comes another system, flies through the middle of the country around this time next week. Could bring some severe weather on the south side of this, where we will have warm, moist air. And then here comes the Euro. Another low forms right here. All right, the Euro says, hey, watch out, Montana. You're going to have a gnarly snowstorm sometime late next week. It's not a forecast, just what this run of the Euro shows. And then, as another boundary comes in, you can almost look at it as like 3 cold fronts. You got the first one, technically for Monday, then another one that comes in about midweek, which really brings a lot of cold air. And then you almost have a reinforcing cold front that digs down and pushes this cold air further south. So it's almost like 3. Okay, if you see me wiping my nose some, I'm trying to avoid the sneeze that feels inevitable at this point. But, we're getting into late next week. Look at this snow falling in the high plains, Denver, and the last frame of the European, which goes 10 days out, which takes us to basically the last Saturday of the month. You have a snow event right in the middle of the country, affecting western Kansas and areas of Wyoming. And this is pretty early in the year for you folks. Not extremely early, but pretty early. Okay, so we're not going to compare all the GFS and the European with snow. There's no point in doing this. What we can do is look at the blend of all models and take it all the way through basically next Sunday afternoon, which is October the 29th. The blend of all models shows a solid signal of snow in the northern plains. Okay, even shows a little bit of a signal for snow well down into Nebraska. Shows a little signal of snow up into the UP and Michigan, northern Wisconsin, and even Minnesota. We got a while before we figure out the details, but we will figure them out here in the days to come. Now, on the severe weather side of this, okay, we'll look closer at the eastern U.S. and central U.S. Here comes this first low pressure based off just the GFS, 1 week out from today. Low pressure flying across the middle of the country. We call this a cutter. All right, anything, I would say east, southeast, and south of this low pressure is game on for at least some kind of ingredient for some storms. All right, so low pressure flies over along with this jet. It's probably going to bring its own associated wind field with it, and it's probably going to help aid in pulling up some moist air all the way up in the Mississippi Valley. Okay, this moves through. So what does this look like as far as temperatures? Well, what we do know is midway next week, it's going to be warm all the way up into Illinois. Who knows? Chicago might get into the upper 70s, 80 degrees. Okay, and then we get into Thursday, same kind of deal. And then we get into next Friday, then we can start to get some more cool air making its way through. But I can tell you next Wednesday and next Thursday could be quite warm across this area of the country. So you got the higher temperatures. All right, you look at dew points, moisture. Okay, you look at next Wednesday evening, you got a pool of pretty moist air for this time of the year. Dew points into the 60s, all the way up into Missouri, Iowa, northern Illinois, right all the way up into areas of Texas and the plains, okay? This looks kind of goofy there right here, I can already tell. But then we start to get into Thursday evening, and there's the low right here, and then there's a moist sector right in here with more rich moisture, 60s, even some low 70 dew points, okay? And then we look even into next Friday, okay? It's still a pool of moist air down here, okay? So, last thing you'll look at really here is kinematics, and here's the GFS showing that low right here at the bottom of this northern jet, and, brings a lot of wind energy. You got a 60 to 70 mid-level jet rolling to the region. You mix dew points into the 60s. You got enough lift with this low pressure, and you're probably going to get some storms sometime mid to late next work week. somewhere over the Mississippi Valley, somewhere. Okay, so we got to figure this one out. I think it's going to be an interesting week next week in the weather world. I really do. We won't talk this to death, but we'll give updates every other evening or so into this weekend until we really figure this one out for you folks. That's all I got. God bless all y'all. Have a great night, and I'll talk to you in the morning.